You know, chipping doesn't have to be that hard. In these next 3 videos, I'm going to share with you some of the real secrets to making chipping easy. People have told me time and time again this has helped them tremendously on their short game, and I can't wait to share it with you. Let's go and get started. All right, in today's video, I'm going to share with you some absolute secrets on pitching it like a pro. Now, I'm not talking about pitching it okay or decent or pretty good. I'm talking about absolutely being a magician around the greens and being able to feel like you can set up over a shot like this and hit every single one of them with spin close to the hole, to almost feel like you could just toss it up there within tap-in range every single time. It can be that easy. I'm on a fairly tight lie here. Some people might get nervous on this. This isn't really long, fluffy grass. You'll see all these are coming out clean, and I'm just chopping them right up there by the hole. It can be easy once you learn the right technique. Now, there's a couple things I'm going to go over in this video. I'm going to go over what I call the front shoulder pivot, and we're going to talk about how to get absolutely laser dialed in on your low point. You notice all those look like I was barely just brushing the grass, and I had an open face 60-degree wedge, but they're coming out low with a lot of spin. I want to share with you the secrets on how to make that happen. Let's go and get started. All right, so let's jump into the details on this. I'm going to break it down for you piece by piece. Now, as I started diving more and more into short game and really trying to master it myself, I realized it is extremely frustrating because there's so many different styles. You see some people saying to lock the hips in the lower body and use more of an upper body like a putting type stroke. You see some people talking about rotating the body. Some people are going to tell you that you need to have a little more of a cut swing. Some people are going to tell you need a little bit more of a draw swing. Play it off the toe, play it off the center, have the hands low, have the hands high. You're hearing all this different stuff, and I'm not saying that a lot of that doesn't work. And really, I think you can do a lot of different styles and make it work. I'm going to share with you the style that I have found works the best, and I'm going to break it down for you piece by piece, and I'm going to give you some drills that are going to seem a little counterintuitive, honestly. But once you try those out, you're going to see the results firsthand. You're going to see me hit some great shots here. And I know if you follow this, you're going to have a lot of success with it. So this isn't the only style that works, but this is a style that if you practice this, you do the drills that I'm going to give you here, make sure you bookmark this because you're going to want to refer to it because you're going to be chipping and pitching it awesome when you're doing this. So first off, I want my feet very close together. If my feet are farther apart and I'm using a kind of locked lower body style where I let my upper body do most of the work, I do not like that at all. And the reason is once you get a little farther away from the green like this, then locking your lower body, you really have to use so much upper body and hands and arms, like you really start to jab at it. It can be not that good once you get farther away. Now, if I have a little 10, 12 foot putt or a 10 or 12 foot chip, that can work perfectly fine. But as I get a little bit more distance, I want to go ahead and let that body rotate. I want my knees really close together. I want my feet really close together. I like to have my stance a little bit open as I go over here in a second, but I want them close together. That way I can pivot and rotate back and through, just as I was going to toss a golf ball up to the hole. So that's the first piece. I almost feel like your heels are within 2 or 3 inches of each other would be really good on a shot like this. And I really want my body to rotate back and through so that it's creating a momentum. And that's what we'll go over. A common theme in all this is that you want to have a momentum to your body and let it go back and through rather than trying to get jerky or jabby. Number 2, I want to have the face a little bit open. Simply for this, it gives me a little bit more margin for error for a couple reasons. As I open the face, this flange on the bottom of the club starts to get exposed and it helps it glide through the turf, which means less chunking and less thinning. It also allows me to get a little more forward shaft lean without de-lofting the club too much. So here I have a 60-degree wedge. I'm going to open the face a little. That probably turns it to, let's say, 65 degrees, something like that. And then I'm going to lean the shaft forward a little bit, which turns it back to its, a little less than 60 degrees at address. So that way my hands can be leaning in front. My hands can be leading the way as I make contact to this, which will make the contact more consistent, and I'll still have enough loft there to generate some spin. So here, a little bit open, the hands are leading the way, and again, I'm rotating my body every single time, getting that nice clean contact, even made one. All right, so this is gonna be pretty good. I feel like this is gonna be a nice video where everything's gonna start to come together from you. So we're off on a good start here, feet close together, body rotating. play the face a little bit open, play the hands a little bit up. Here's the part that is the most important of any of it. It's contact. You'll notice when I'm hitting these shots that I'm brushing the turf. I'm not digging down into it. So I'm not playing my hands forward with this late leading edge square and hitting down into that where I'm really chopping down into the ground. If I do that, I could start to lay the sod over it. I could start to chunk some and thin some. So we definitely don't want that to happen because we're going to be inconsistent if we start to hit down into the ground too much. I'm also letting the momentum dictate my low point. So as I swing back and through here, as I go back and through, I'm feeling like, almost like I could take two fingers and just barely kind of let the momentum of the club swing as I let it fall out of my hands. That's how loose I'm holding it here, but let the momentum of this club swing and I could brush the turf. So I'm actually gonna do that. I'm gonna open the face slightly, I'm gonna let my body pivot, and I'm just gonna take a couple fingers here in my left hand, and I'm gonna feel like I just brush the ground. That's the feeling that I wanna have to create that. So the reason the ball is coming out low is not because I'm de-lofting the club. The reason the ball is coming out low is because I do have a little forward shaft lean, but I'm hitting it so clean. What's happening is this club face is grabbing the ball. There's a lot of friction there. And because I'm hitting down on it slightly or level with the ground, that ball is grabbing the club face and coming out lower. It's not the loft on the club that's making that go fairly low. And on this one, I'm actually going to play the face open again. You'll see this by looking at my club face. It's fairly open. And I'm going to try to hit one really low just with a lot of really good friction. There you go. You see that never got much higher than pin high. I hit it a little hard trying to get more spin on it. And you'll see that it checked up. I almost landed to the hole and only rolled out 5 or 6 feet. Same thing there. Not really getting much above pin high. And you can see those checking up right by the flag. So the only way that can happen is getting good friction on there. The only way that you can get good friction is really control your low point by letting the club momentum dictate where you ground out. And you can see that one was nice and low there too. Let me hit one more, and then I'm gonna show you the best drill to get the feel of this momentum for yourself and to really dial in on how I can come down and make the cleanest contact possible every time. So let's jump up on the green. I'm gonna show you a drill that works great for this. All right, now here's the part that I warned you about that's gonna seem a little bit odd. So I'm here on the putting green. They just recently aerified the green. So I wouldn't recommend doing this on the course like I am today, but the green's a little bit rough anyways. I do this on the chipping green. Find right by the edge of the green where you're not really gonna mess anything up, even if you take a little bit of a divot as you're first learning this. But after you've done it a while, I'm telling you, you're gonna get just so precise, laser-like precision on your low point. I'm gonna show you exactly how to do that. So what we're trying to be able to do here, if you're gonna be a fantastic pitcher and chipper of the golf ball, is I have to be able to control when my club comes down. I need to be able to have it hit the ground in the same spot every single time and at the same depth. So you can see I'm swinging hard enough there to where I'm actually roughing up. I'm getting a little bit of a smack. You can see some sand kind of popping up as I'm doing that. And because my club face is a little open, it's just the bounce of the club is kind of skipping on the turf. It's not that leading edge. If you expose that leading edge, you're gonna have difficulty digging into the ground. So if I expose that leading edge, I can hit a little too far down, chunk it, and it pops up. I can hit it a little thin and it shoots across the green. If I have the face a little bit open like this, I can still get a little forward shaft lean, and that leading edge just isn't quite exposed there. I'm never gonna dig. You can see I've hit this ground 10, 15 times, and I'm not digging down there. Now there's a difference here in how you've probably seen people say that before, and you probably think, well, you know, Clay, I would just do that. If I could control it like that, I'd just do it. I'm gonna show you the technique that makes that possible. What you wanna do is almost feel like you focus on your left shoulder, almost feel like you have a little reverse pivot. So as I come back, I'm almost leaning left as I'm going my backswing. I'm gonna exaggerate so you can see that, and then you'll notice I'm doing that a very small amount in my normal swing. So here I'm leaning left, and then as I come through, I'm falling a little bit back, and as I fall back, my hips extend, so I'm not doing this. That's the death move. I'm keeping my chest down. That's the death move for chipping. I'm doing this. I'm leaning left, And as I fall back, now my body's moving back, my hips are moving forward. My hips are toward the target because I've rotated. And because I'm falling back a little bit, that controls my club from digging in the ground. I can feel like I'm throwing this thing in the ground as hard as I want to, but as long as I come back this way, what happens is that left shoulder rises, and I feel like I couldn't chunk this thing if I wanted to, because as I fall this way, it just levels it out. It's like taking this club, imagine I was going to drop it into the ground like this. So I have the club here, and I'm just going to let this thing fall into the turf. But what happens when I lift my hand up? Right, as my hand starts to turn back up, it levels it out like a plane coming into a runway. It comes down, it levels out, and then it's going to come back up if it wants to. Same thing's happening here. I'm letting the momentum of the club swing, and I'm letting the pivot of my left shoulder and my body make sure that that never digs down in the turf. That's why I can take just with one hand. I'll move this ball so you can see. I could take just with one hand, and I could just brush the turf there every single time. It's not like I'm some fantastic athlete. I'm just using the momentum of the club and the pivot of my body to control that low point. So what I'm feeling there, little forward shaft lean, I'm leaning this way, my left shoulder is coming down. I'm exaggerating here on that. You'll see me doing it more to a smaller degree in the real one. And then as I come through, my shoulder leans back, and that keeps me from digging. That's how you can get this low point control really, really good. And eventually what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to hit these golf balls off this green and feel like we're never going to take a divot. I hit that one about 30 feet in the air. I'm never going to take a divot. I'm never going to dig. And I could just sit there and hit them all day. So I've hit 2 in a row. Both of those flew at least 30 feet. They ended up almost 50 feet from me. And I didn't dig anything into the ground. I still hit the turf. I still brushed the grass a little bit. But you can look on the camera, you see there's no digging. I'm not roughing up that turf at all. So I'm making really nice, clean contact. Now I'm going a little farther. That one flew about 50 feet in the air. And I'm gonna go even farther than that here and make a little harder swing just to show you, you can ramp this up and go faster and faster once you get it down. And that's about the max I can do. That's about a 70-footer. That was just a little tiny bit thin there, but even for this drill, that would be pushing it. So I really just want to do this, feeling that momentum of the club, and just practice by hitting little 5 and 10 foot chips like that. Now here's the way you get your precision in on it. What's going to happen is if you go straight to the turf, you're going to get a little bit nervous. You're going to feel like you don't want to dig down in there, and you're going to pick it up, or you're not going to have that pivot down yet, and it's going to want to dig on you. You're going to chunk it one time, and you're going to want to quit this drill. Here's how you want to start with a bucket of sand. And I'll be honest with you, most people aren't going to do what I say here, and most people aren't going to get the success that you get if you do what I say here. But if you take the time to do this every day, or at least 7 times, I would say, here's how it's going to happen. The first time you do this drill, you're going to think, daggone it, this is impossible. I'm never going to get this. This is so hard. I don't know what Clay's talking about. I can't feel the pivot. I can't feel my left shoulder. I can't feel the momentum of the club. It's really, really tough. The second time you do this drill, you're going to think, man, that was hard, but oh, that one I actually hit pretty decent. By the third time you do this drill, and the fourth and the fifth, it's going to start to feel pretty good. By the 6th and 7th time, it's going to feel just completely natural, like you can just brush this turf every single time. It's not going to be that hard for you. But if you quit after the first one, you're never going to get to the good stuff. So here's what I want to feel. Again, it's like if this club was going to fall down in the ground, I'm lifting my hands up to keep it from digging there. I'm doing that by letting my shoulder come down. And you watch a lot of great pictures of the golf ball. They're going to look like they're leaning a little left, and then as they come through, they're falling back this way, away from the target. So I'm going to set up a little pile of sand about 1 inch tall here. And what I want to do is I just want to clip the very top portion of that sand. So I've hit that sand now, and I've made 2 swings. I barely touched it that time. 3 swings, I'm just clipping little grains of sand off there. I missed it that time. But I'm going to keep on going, and I'm just going to fast forward here until all this sand's gone. Right, and I've rushed it now down to where all the sand pile's gone and there's nothing left. I'm going to see how many strikes I can make with 1 inch tall pile of sand until I get down to the bottom. And if I can get 4, 5, or 6 little swipes where I just take a little bit of sand off and a little bit more sand off, a little bit more sand off, then I'm really controlling the low point. Now, you don't have to do that very much. 15, 20 swings, and you'll be surprised how much better of a feel you have for this. And again, 2, 3, 4 days in a row, and now all of a sudden you have a really good feel to where you can just kind of pick it every single time. It's so common to see players chunk and thin shots around the green, but what if I told you it is really simple to hit clean chip shots day in and day out, really close to the hole, if you know the right technique. I'm gonna go over some of the biggest mistakes that you can make, and if you're making these, man, you're making chipping hard. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so mistake number one, putting the ball too far back in your stance. And usually this comes also with putting your feet too far apart. So you do wanna hit down on this golf ball. I do wanna be hitting down, hitting the ball first and then the ground in front. I may clip a little bit of the grass before the ball is completely fine. And I also want to have forward shaft lean. So I want my hands leading in front of the club head when I hit this shot. Now, to do that, it's really easy to think, well, I can just put the ball back in my stance. That's going to basically make it where I have to hit down because there's really no way to scoop up when I'm back here on the back of my stance. And my hands are definitely going to be in front when they're like this. But if my feet are this far apart and my weight is also on my left side, like we've heard, basically everybody says, this ball is way far back of where my low point is. So if my weight's on my left side, I'm gonna be kind of grounding out, or the low point of my swing arc would be kind of under the inside of my left shoulder here. So that would be somewhere around here. When I put this ball this far back in my stance, really the only way to reach to it is to start to chop down too far, very much descending into the golf ball. It's very easy to do that and just cold stub it. And we do a couple of those, and what ends up happening is our brain says, I sure as heck don't want to do that anymore. That's super embarrassing. Let me try to not hit the ground now. And I start to get a little bit of this chicken wing type action, or I try to pull the club up from slamming into the ground, and I end up getting one of these, where you just kind of top it across or skull it across the green, your arms fold up. Basically the most embarrassing things that can happen, because now you're deathly afraid of just slamming the club in the ground or sculling it across the green. Yeah, that's no fun, not a good way to play golf. If we get the right ball position, things get a lot easier. So I like to put the feet much closer together. It allows me to rotate more easily through the shot, which I'll get to here in a second, but it also allows me to play this ball kind of on my left heel here. So depending on where the camera's lined up, this may not be perfectly lined up, but I want the ball to be on the left heel. That way when my weight is on my left side, now my ball is there too. So the inside of my left shoulder is kind of directly, just barely in front of the golf ball. So my low spot is really good in relationship to where the golf ball is. So now I can have those hands forward. I can hit just a basic bump and run chip here, and that's going to be pretty solid results time and time out. Even if I get a little too down in it, I hit a little too much ground, it's going to be fine because my low point is going to be just in front of that golf ball. With that ball back in my stance, not going to be good. I'm going to feel really jerky over top of this ball. Number two would be decelerating. One of the worst things that you can do is making too big of a backswing. A lot of times I'll see players make a big backswing and all of a sudden they're slowing down. Man, that makes me nervous just even thinking about it. That's going to be very inconsistent. So I'd like to see roughly the same length backswing as you have follow through. That makes it really easy to make sure I'm accelerating through the shot and I'm going to make that good, clean contact. And it's not really going to feel like I have to do that much work to make it happen. So there, I even chunked that one just a hair, but because my low point was good, because I accelerated through it, it rolled out and it ended up just as good as if I'd hit it perfectly clean. All right, so the next one is locking up your legs. This is a really, really tough one. The reason this one is so prevalent is because it makes sense at surface level. If I think about, I'm going to keep my legs dead still, I'm not going to move my legs, and I'm just going to go upper body, well, that eliminates one of your degrees of freedom. If I eliminate the legs, I should be more consistent. There's less things that can go wrong. Unfortunately, when you do this, when you lock up those legs, now I have to do everything with my upper body and my arms. So I tend to get way too handsy. My wrist is going to tend to break down like this. Might get a little bit of a chicken wing there. That's all coming from not rotating the lower body and the knees. So if I do this properly, I want to go ahead and have my knees pivot as I'm coming back and through. One thing that really helps with this is getting your feet a little bit more open toward the target. I don't like to have my feet square like this because I feel like I'm having to use my hands to go across my body. When you look at really good chippers and pitchers of the golf ball, they're almost all going to set up with their feet slightly open to where the target is lined up. So I like to have this front foot open and the back foot kind of facing forward to the target too, and that's going to help me to get my knees rotating. From there, I'm not worried about keeping my knees still at all. I'm going to go ahead, let my knees rotate back and through, and that's going to give me a good feeling of rhythm, and it's going to give me a good, fluidness through the golf ball to hit it really clean. If I point my feet forward, if I lock up my lower body, I'm all hands and arms, it's going to be a disaster. You're just going to hit so many thin ones and chunks, it's going to be really miserable doing it that way. You may be able to do that if you're using a super low lofted club and you're not very far from the hole. Here I'm a little bit farther. If I was only 10 or 15 feet from the hole and I was using a 7-iron, maybe I could use more of a bump and run type putting stroke and just have my arms go back and through. The problem with that is once I get any farther than that, this simple putting stroke is not going to be fast enough. I couldn't use a putting stroke to get the ball from here to that hole. So I have to start breaking everything down. That's when it goes out of whack. So it's not that you can't use a putting stroke to chip. It's just you can only do that when it's really close. Once it gets a little farther, it just makes it impossible to make that happen. Lastly here, I want to have my weight on my front foot, but again, I want to make sure that it's not my feet way far apart like this. I'm going to have my feet close together so my feet are fairly balanced. They don't feel like it's way out of whack. Like I don't feel like I'm like this when I'm over it and I'm way to the left. I'm just favoring my left side a little bit. My heels are only going to be not even a golf club head width apart. And then from there, with my weight staying a little bit left, I feel like I can just pivot around that left leg and my knees and my body are going to rotate on through. You see, if I do that, I can get really consistent results. I just need to learn to aim a little bit more to the left. But those are all hit pretty clean. Follow those tips and you'll hit clean shots too. All right, pretty good one there. Let's see if that will spin. There we go, spun it back a little bit. That's one of the most fun shots in golf. You hit that shot that comes in there nice and low, checks up, you see it spin back on the green. How in the heck did the pros make it look so easy, and how can we do the same thing ourselves? I want to give you the real secrets to creating tons of backspin in this video. Now, first let's talk about the myth of shaft lean, or the myth of lack of shaft lean. A lot of times when people are saying, I want to hit a spin shot, there's two different ones that they're talking about. Now, this one here is a 50-yard low launching spin shot. Now, when I hit this one, a lot of people will say, well, I want to create a lot of loft, that way it gets backspin on it. So I'm going to go ahead and release the club shaft. I want the club shaft to be straight up and down. That is a complete myth. When you're 40, 50, 60, anything outside of 40 yards, you're creating quite a bit of shaft lean. Your hands are in front on these shots. And what we found through tons of people have had lots of research with the pro players using machines like this $18,000 GC quad that I have here, and it tells me exactly how much loft I have on it. What I found is that you want to have about mid-40s to slightly higher 40s loft when you're hitting these shots. Now this is a 60-degree wedge, so if you take this little trailer hitch marker here, and I put that on that club, that would be the direction my face is pointing when the shaft is straight up and down. Mid-40s means I'm going to take 15 degrees off of that. I'm going to have this shaft leaning forward, de-lofting that club quite a bit when I'm doing this. That allows me to get more consistent contact. You see, if you get too much loft on it, the ball is going to slide up the face. Imagine like a flop shot. So if I was going to hit a flop shot here with this face just straight up and down toward the sky, that ball would launch high, but it wouldn't have much spin. It's almost like a knuckleball. That's because the club is just sliding right underneath the ball, and it goes up in the air, but it doesn't have much backspin on it. If I want to get the backspin, I have to have my hands leaning in front a little bit. Now the second thing with the hands leaning in front is it gives you a lot more consistency. So here, I've got my 60-degree wedge. I'm going to have the hands quite in front, maybe 15 degrees, and we'll see how much spin we can get on it. Now anything over 7,000 RPMs on a 50-yard shot is pretty daggone good. So we'll see if we can get over that 7,000 RPMs. That one's going to be pretty good. Caught that one, nipped it pretty nice, just past the hole, and we saw that one checked up right away. Now 47 degrees aloft, that means I had 13 degrees of shaft lean right where we wanted to be. Maybe just a touch too thin on the face because I got 6,700 RPMs of backspin. So not bad. We can see that it checked up on the green, but we might be able to do a little bit better than that. Now the next thing that we want to do is we don't want to feel like we're slow through contact. This is an aggressive shot. I have to get the speed coming through the shot to get the spin on there. That's one of the reasons that I'm using this 60-degree wedge. If I use a 60, like a lot of the pros are doing, if I really accelerate, I'm going to have a lot of shaft lean naturally, and I'm going to get about the perfect amount of loft on there. Now, if I use a 56-degree wedge or a pitching wedge even, I would start off with less loft, which would get me about the right amount of loft. But then if I went ahead and accelerated and got really aggressive and got my hands in front so I could be consistent, I would have too little loft in, sorry. So we start out with a 60. We're nice and aggressive through the shot. The second thing I want to think about, I like to play this shot with a slightly open face until I get out around 60, 70 yards. So that face is just going to be turned open just a few degrees to help engage the bounce there. And that just helps me to keep from digging on this. Gives me a little more room for error. Now I'm going to set my feet a little bit forward. I want to have it, this would be square. I'm going to go ahead and put my feet slightly angled forward like this, especially my front foot. That really helps me to rotate through the shot better and to get a lot more action on it, get a lot of zip on it. You'll see a lot of pros set up like this on those 40, 50 yard shots. Again, as I go longer, I may set up a little bit more square. Let's try this one out. That one may be a touch short, but overall a pretty good shot. We see that one start to spin back a little bit. Again, 47 degrees loft, got the good number there. My backspin was 8,000 on that one, so I caught it just a hair better. That's about as high as I'm going to get on one of these shots. Now, there's a couple more myths on creating spin. You don't really create backspin by having that shot go high. When I see this shot 40, 50, 60 yards, I want that thing to launch really low. In fact, I'd like my launch angle to be under 30 degrees. That one was 27.6 degrees. That looks to your eye, you don't have to know all these numbers and know that, but that looks to most people's eye to be really low. The reason it's coming out low is because there's a lot of friction. So when I'm catching this ball, if I want to have a lot of spin, one of the reasons I have that shaft lean forward too is that I want to catch this ball kind of low on the face. If I have the handle leaning straight up and down, that's actually going to pull this leading edge up off the turf. So when I have the shaft leaning back, now my leading edge is pulled up off the ground, and it's really easy to thin shots if you start doing that. As I lean the handle forward, now it starts to pull that leading edge closer to the turf, and I can hit it lower on the golf ball. So the key with spin is I can't have any debris, any water, any turf, anything get between my perfectly clean enough to eat off of it face of my wedge and a perfectly dry, clean golf ball. It has, both surfaces have to be really dry and clean to get that zip on there. If I hit it slightly lower on the face, that's going to help it to launch a little lower. It's also going to help to make sure nothing gets between the golf ball and the face. So I like to think just slightly low on the face, that's the best spot to hit it, maybe a millimeter lower than normal. If you're looking down and you see a little spot on your wedge where there's grass stuck to it, it's not going to spin. The stuff that's inside the grass, all that oily, grease, water, whatever's inside a blade of grass causes it to slip up the face rather than really grab there. So again, this one I want to visualize it launching pretty low. That comes from me getting good friction on a nice clean strike low on the face. It also comes from me leaning that shaft forward. Let's go ahead and hit one more here. There we go, maybe a little out to the right. That's pretty good. And that one spun back a little bit too. So on there, that shot, 46 degrees loft, again, perfect, 7,500 RPMs of backspin, again, right where I want to be. Now, let's be honest, that leaves you with a problem. How do I know if I'm hitting it 50 yards, 60 yards, 70 yards? How do I know if I'm getting it to stop right at the correct distance? How do the pros seem to be able to hit it right on the number? Well, I like to use a system that I call a clock system, but there's a specific way you do this. It's not about necessarily where you stop your hands for each distance of shot, but it's also about a specific rhythm and a specific timing that you use. If you don't get that timing right, you're not going to be able to hit it right on your numbers. I've got an awesome video that's going to walk you right through this. I'll play a preview of it here in a second. All you need to do is go ahead and click the card that pops up on the screen. And if you don't see that card, don't worry, just go down to the description below, click the link there, and you'll also get instant access. I'm going to walk you through the timing, the rhythm, and the technique of that clock swing. That way we can hit these spinning shots, but we can get them to land right on the number that we want so we have some nice, really short putts. Let's go and get started.
Well, I used to actually practice a lot in high school. This is one of my favorite things to do. I had a strip mowed down the back of my yard where I took the lawnmower. My parents probably hated this because I mowed it down to like half-inch turf in the back of the yard because we lived on a farm. And I would set buckets or towels along this, and I would try to set them at those distances that I knew. And maybe I knew my 56 degree went right at 65 yards. So I'd set a bucket 65 yards away, and I would go ahead and do my 9 o'clock swing, and I would try to fly it right into the bucket. And I'd get to where I could tell for sure if I was going to be a couple yards short or a couple yards long, just because it gets so ingrained when you get the rhythm and the finish the same every time. We can use different length backswings to control the distance of our wedge shots. So for example, if we imagine that I'm a clock and 6 o'clock is directly down, my wedge would be at 6 o'clock, or my arms would be at 6 o'clock, I can go back to a 7:30 swing and I can have the same finish and hit at a certain distance, or I can go back to 9 or 10:30 and swing through to the same distance, and that's going to control, or the same finish point, and that's going to control the distance that my wedge shots are going to fly in the air. And I've got to keep that rhythm and that tempo very, very consistent. If I vary my tempos, I can hit it all kinds of different distances. So for example, I could have a real quick tempo 7:30 swing and probably hit this 90 yards. I could have a, maybe not really that far, probably 50 or 60 yards. I could have a very slow tempo 7:30 swing and hit half that distance. So I've got to get my distance the same. I've got to get my rhythm the same. That's the real key to it. And the second piece on there